So as I said, my name is Michael Wirtz. I'm the head of research and library technology for VCUarts Qatar. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Qatar, where it is. It's been in the news a bit lately, giving away airplanes and such. The VCUarts Qatar, 2 years ago at this conference, well, at the conference, the Artless UK conference 2 years ago, I presented on the creation of this comics lab. For those of you who aren't at the conference, Leland Hill, who is a professor of graphic design, and I designed, we created the space space in the collection just as we were starting to recover from the pandemic. It was kind of a response to the wanting the physicality of a collection again. The idea was to build a browsable collection where students could come in and discover something they weren't looking for as far as comics are concerned. There are no comic book stores in Qatar. There was one that was very small that closed after about a year of operation. Nobody really knows why. So a lot of the comics that we have collected in the lab might be the only ones in the country. Probably many of them are the only ones in the MENA region. So we really wanted to make this space a place where students could come and engage with it. Although the popularity of comics has been growing in the MENA region over the past decade, it doesn't seem to be taken as a serious media for conveying serious narratives. Even among our students, who are all students at an art and design school, comics or comic art seems to be seen as entertainment rather than a medium for conveying a message. Sorry, I'm trying to coordinate two different things here. All right, so in the 2 year sense that we presented, we've added another member to our team, which you can see up there. You see Leland and I, and then Kala Katana, who's a member of the English faculty at VCUarts Qatar, which brings a kind of a literary criticism element to our endeavor here, so we're really happy to have her. We've participated in many classes, including costume design, film, like there was a food elective class that was designing with comics. We participated in several graphic design classes. We've made improvements to the space itself. You can see we've got a fancy sign and some other things. Of course, we've been continuing to develop the collection. But in 2023, as this was all getting started, we were just trying to figure out how we could facilitate the actual production of graphic narratives, which has always been our goal, is to actually create comics from the region, authentic stories from the region. So luckily for us, Leland and I both attended the ICAF, which is International Comic Arts Foundation Conference in Canada that year. And we, at that conference, Frederick Vaughan Collard, Sarah Levitt, an artist Emily Chow, Alyssa Horse, Jonathan Dalton, presented their graphic narratives of migration workshop, which I've included a few examples of here. If you go to the graphic narratives of, just do a Google search on the graphic narratives of migration, you might want to throw it in University of British Columbia, then you can see a much more thing. But let's see. I don't know. What they did through this workshop was they assigned a theme of the idea of migration into Canada, and then tasked academics and artists to come to develop several comic graphic narratives that would illustrate the different aspects of migrating into Canada. By developing a workshop around a central theme, it added a certain structure to the collaboration. It reduced the common problem of needing to identify and define problems before collaborating. So as soon as this discussion or this roundtable was done, Leland and I decided that we needed to figure out how we needed to make this happen in Qatar. So nearly 2 years after we saw that roundtable, we were hosting a similar event here. You can see standing up. So this was the next step. To justify our funding, we determined several objectives, which were here in community engagement, cross-disciplinary collaboration, cross-institutional collaboration. VCUarts Qatar is part of the Education City campus, and so there are several other American campuses within that, schools within that. So the administration really wanted us to work across those campus boundaries and across those silos. And the ultimate goal was the protection of authentic narratives through comics. One thing that was kind of odd was we stressed that this was not an educational event. Our funding came through the Center of Creative Research through VCU. So it was I intended to facilitate the creation of actual research. So we saw this as creative production. That's what we were funded to do. We were gathering community members to collectively create graphic narratives. So for the topic that we chose was third culture kids. For those unfamiliar with the term, I'm sure everybody is, but the term, which doesn't just apply to children, it refers to people who are raised in a culture different than that of their parents, or the culture or the nationality, and live in a different environment during a significant portion of their developmental years. So with an 89% expatriate population, the term or the idea of third culture existence is very prevalent in Qatar. And we thought it would make for a rich subject for exploration through graphic narratives. One of the differences between our retreat and the workshop hosted by the Center for Migration Studies was the participants. So there they had mostly academics, people who write things, asked to write comics. And we had almost the opposite problem. Our creative community was instead a community of artists and designers, and we didn't have the academic. At the school, we didn't have the academic, I guess, foundations to help develop the narrative portion of the comics. So luckily, we found two academics from our home campus, and this is Dr. S.J. Sindhu and Dr. Jeff Bouvier, both through the creative writing department on our home campus. Dr. Sindhu, she's the author, her most recent graphic novel is Shakti. It's a fairly well-known graphic novel, but she also was the author of also a prose novel of Blue Skin Gods. I'm not sure if that one's a little bit more well-known to people. Dr. Bouvier, he is an author of several graphic poetry novels. So, so the retreat itself was structured as a mix of presentation and creative production. So in addition to the lectures on script writing and poetry comics by Sindhu and Jeff, we had a presentation by Dr. James Hodop, who's a faculty member at Northwestern, on comics and social activism, and a lecture on world building by Lahore-based illustrator and artist Hazem Azif. And if you can see Hazem up there in the upper left-hand corner, James Hodop there lecturing different parts of the workshop. All right, so this is where I freestyle a little bit. So this is just some images of the retreat itself, and the retreat was organized by myself, Leland, Dr. Katana, Dr. Sindhu, and Dr. Bovier. We had somewhere, I think, at one point we had 19 participants for the 3-day workshop. It was, and people kind of dropped off as it came in, but we were anticipating a maximum capacity of 20 in the small space that we had available. So we thought 19 was actually pretty good. The really interesting thing is the participants really came from different aspects, some unexpected aspects of the greater creative culture in Qatar. The man you see kind of in the center there laughing, well, towards the right laughing, he's a football coach who was hired from Brazil to come coach one of the youth football leagues, and so he just thought he had a fascination with comics and signed up for the 3-day workshop. But we had several people. We had lots of community members. We had faculty members from VCUarts Qatar. We had staff members from VCUarts Qatar. We had some alumni that came in and joined us, and then a handful of students. Just some of the photos throughout the thing. The end of the session were the idea was to create scripts. We didn't ask them to. Well, we asked them to give us their scripts. We didn't demand that anybody gave us their scripts at the end. But everybody presented their final scripts at the end after workshopping them through several different workshops with Dr. Bouvier and Dr. Sindhu. Just some images from the workshop. At the bottom, you can see that was the final presentations. And so these are some of the results. Just these were preliminary scripts. Some of them were actually traditional scripts, like you would script out an actual comic book or a comic, scene. This was done by, he's a translator he's a professional translator who's working in Qatar and just decided to come in for the 3-day workshop. This is actually by Hazem Azif. This was kind of, even though we refer to these as scripts, most of them ended up being pretty graphic in nature due to the people that chose to participate in the conference. This one we thought was terrific. She's just a Doha-based artist who came to the workshop, and she did all of this in like a couple hours on her iPad, just sitting down and creating these. The theme of it, the greater theme of it, was these little star creatures that she made had to paint themselves to fit into a different culture than they were born into. This one is by two. Well, one of them's a staff member in our writing center. Noor is a staff member, and then Amna was a alumni MFA, and they created this script about these little creatures who they all had physical characteristics that were reminiscent of their home country, and so as they moved around, they would take on the characteristics of other countries. So they have the eagle's talons represented one country. The lion's tail was another country. Sarah Shaban, she's a staff member in our communications office, and she had this kind of very, very trippy sort of psychedelic, which is really great. It was really interesting. This is another MFA alumni from one of our first graduating classes of MFA students years ago. And she said, anybody who was in Lebanon during the Lebanese war in the early 80s will recognize this, where it's a birthday party and suddenly the lights go out, and then they finish the celebration by candlelight. So now that we have all the scripts, the next step is trying to find a way to facilitate their production. We have some funding to commission artists to further develop these scripts into finalized pieces of artwork. So we hope to go that way with some of the artists who have given us permission to use them that way. Hazem has actually agreed to illustrate several of our scripts. And so we are looking into different ways to disseminate them. So hopefully in the future, we will be able to have some sort of an anthology or some sort of collection. We may run this several times, collecting scripts through several different themes. We're not really sure. It's going to depend on what funding we can get. So, oops. And so there's a photo of everybody who was there at the very end of the conference. We had dropped off a few of them by the end, but those are the ones that that gave us all completed scripts at the end. Thank you.